I'm Emperor Tiberius Storm from the Empire of Calypso, and today I wanted to talk a little bit about level of micronations, or different tiers of micronations. We know that micronations are born out of a variety of reasons, and a lot of times the micronations are based on those reasons, and so they meet certain criteria that I believe a micronation is, and others, they might be a little weaker, or they don't have as many things in certain categories that you might think of them as micronations. And there are thousands of micronations, and they're so varied that it may be wrong for me to categorize them, but this is how I see them. And I just try to figure out where the Empire of Calypso stands compared to some of these other micronations, and so that's what led me to this video. So if you're looking at top tier micronations, level 1 micronations, they would be micronations with defined territories, populations, permanent populations within those territories, and those two criteria right there would be important, because if you're looking to be a real nation, obviously you need land, at least as of right now. That may change with internet-based micronations and other entities right now, but those two are critical. I would also base it on some level of recognition, maybe longevity and popularity, to see if these micronations stand the test of time, what they've done right, what they've done wrong. So the first one that comes to mind is the Principality of Sealand. Back in the mid to late 60s, I think it was, they took over a gun platform, I think in the North Sea, off of England's coast, and turned it into a radio station. They lived there. They actually had a hostile takeover at one point, and then came back and reclaimed the territory. That's a very popular micronation, maybe the most popular of all time. So that would fit the criteria with a population, defined territory. It has that, and I kind of use defined territories because land is an issue. It's harder and harder to find land that hasn't been claimed anywhere. And so you have micronations claiming parts of the moon, or interstellar bodies, or whatever. As far as level of recognition, just because they're so popular, I would have to put them up there in that top tier level. And the same with longevity. They have recognition, maybe not macronationally, but certainly on a micronational level. Hutt River Province, which in Australia had the same thing, but they actually had land that was pretty recognized by Australia itself. I don't believe they paid taxes, and the king there died recently in the last couple of years, so I think unfortunately that micronation is no longer existing, but that was a pretty strong one. Freetown Christiana, trying to think, Royal Republic of Ladonia, trying to think of the name there, because most people just think of it as Ladonia. That's the guy who was building art with all kinds of driftwood or whatever on the coast, built these big towers and whatever, and he had a defined territory, and some of the other things I talked about. Liberland might be considered that. And so there are a number that fit that criteria. Those would be your level 1 type micronations. Level 2 would have most of those things, but I think in this category I'd place a few, or a couple that I can think of off the top of my head, that were actually destroyed by governments. The first is Rose Island, which was maybe in the 60s or 70s. I can't remember now. But they had a platform that they built, something like, whatever it was, 10 miles off the coast, plus 100 meters or something, so they'd be considered in international waters. And they were pretty popular. They were like a tourist destination. A lot of people from the Italian coast would go out there and drink and party, and The Italian government was getting a little upset with that, and so they basically bombed the hell out of it and destroyed it. Um, there was a movie out called Rose Island that I've seen actually, and I think it's all in Italian if I remember correctly, but it has English captions. So if you want to watch that, it's a pretty good story. I don't know, it's kind of a hard watch at times, but it's a good story. So I would recommend watching that. Um, Another one, which I'm trying to remember, the Republic of Minerva was a millionaire who built his own island out in the Southeast Pacific. He decided to drop sand on an old sandbar or something like that and brought the elevation up. And I can't remember if it was Tuvalu or Tonga. One of the governments there went and destroyed it. They didn't like the fact that he was so close to their territory, starting a government that I believe at the time might have been a springboard for terrorists or some kind of overtake of their country. So they were suspicious and they destroyed it too. So those were micronations that had territory, had a lot of the things that we strive for, but were destroyed because they were too close to whatever nation didn't want them being there. So level 3 would be claim territories, but I guess never sought to officially claim sovereignty. Malaysia would be a good one, I think, in that category. They're just as popular, if not more so, than Sealand and some of the others that I spoke of. But even though they had territory and they did claim sovereignty, they didn't push it with the government. But very well known. They have their own post office. They have a little miniature railroad that is like their transportation system. It's a self-contained little do-it-yourself micronation, but on a level that a lot of micronations would like to get to. I was drawing a blank. The Kingdom of Lovely back in the early 2000s, maybe 2003, 2004. No, wait, I had 2005. It's an English or a British comedian who decided to make his own micronation. There's a whole series of videos. I would place that micronation in the 3rd level where they have territory. He says he like officially claimed sovereignty, but there was this whole thing where he was dancing in the streets and made believe he was taking over like this castle island or whatever. So I put him and that micronation in that category. Weichsland, the Kingdom of Weichsland, similar time, 2005 to present, a lot of the same criteria. So little by little, as I'm going through these tiers, they either don't have land, or they're a little less popular, or they don't have a permanent population, or whatever. So this brought me to where I think the Empire of Calypso is, where we are at this point in time. And that would be level 4, where we have a lot of the things. We do have land. We do have a permanent population. We're not as popular as some of the old timers, the Babe Ruths of like Sealand, Malaysia, whatever. But I would put internet nations, ones that have a pretty good following up there before us, although I'd put us in the same category. So right now, some of the big micronations that get a pretty good following, they may not have a large population, maybe population of 5 or 10 or 50 citizens, not really large in micronational scale. But anyway, the Empire of Eternia made something like 5 or 6 years ago, in earnest 3 or 4 years ago. Emperor AP has a lot of videos he's put out. He's done a lot to help bind the micronational community. I would say the same for the Empire of Stamaria. They're both very popular right now when it comes to internet presence. Although Stamaria does have land, I believe, and Eternia does not. And actually, the Empire of Eternia is doing some fundraising for land for their community. Um, so again, smaller populations, although they have permanent populations, may or may not have land. Um, Commonwealth of Dracul is about 4 or 5 years old now. They have a pretty good community presence as far as I know. Not much of an internet presence, but through the grapevine, I believe they're fairly popular, and they had a whole Dracula vampire thing, which was kind of cool. I don't know a lot of what they do. Um, Quite honestly, once you get into micronationalism, if you're not part of an organization or somebody else's micronation, and you start your own micronation, the amount of time you can put into it really detracts from just a lot of other things. Just being relevant means tons of videos, tons of updates, redoing parts of maybe your Constitution, Declaration of Independence, networking, all of those things. So you do tend to lose track of other micronations, or heard about them, saw a video 10 years ago, and really haven't followed up. So the purpose of this is not to give a full history of every micronation either, but just kind of funny that I was wondering where the Empire of Calypso fit in compared to others, and then kind of came up with this list. So those are level 4 micronations. I would say that the Empire of Calypso, our micronation here, is a bit more of an activist nation, and there are some of those too. Again, that goes into what I stated at the very beginning of why you begin a micronation or why you get into micronationalism. So it doesn't count toward the list as far as a tier or a level for being considered a micronation. But it means we do some things in the community too, maybe like Dracul. And we've just begun our internet endeavor. So we have a little ways to go with that. But I'm going to keep up the videos, and hopefully you continue to watch and like and subscribe and all of that. Little plug there. Level 5 micronations. Let's talk about some that don't have land, don't really intend to have land, but maybe they claim like a park or somewhere in space, which it's hard enough for micronations to be recognized by the larger community, the world, without territory. Once you start saying, I claim Venus, or I claim Antarctica, or I claim all of England or Australia, there's a stigma attached to that, and it kind of brings down the validity of other micronations, in my eye. I understand West Arctica, or the Duchy of West Arctica, I think it's called now, where they're an activist nation like us, and they're trying to save the world as far as climate change and Antarctica and life forms and all of that. So I get it. So it's maybe more of a platform for that. The nation of celestial space is all about owning other parts of the solar system, and I think, like, I don't know, I can't remember, like a part of Orion or somewhere distant, I'm not sure. The Arican Empire, these are places without land, and even if you don't have land right now as a micronation, I think to be considered a micronation, and again, I'm wrong, maybe, this is just my point of view, but if you want to do what the Sealands and the Hutt Rivers have done, and even the next tier, Molossia, you kind of need your own place, so you're not going to the local park to put flags in and claim the Capitol building. And if you walked in the Capitol with your flag and said, I claim this, you'd probably be arrested. So let's be honest, micronationalism is hard enough. The stigma is attached to it. We're a step below computer gaming and nerdy D&D gaming and things like that, which I also don't have an issue with. But when you put a title on it as a micronation, I do take issue with that. I think that's a bit of a problem, because we all want some kind of recognition for what we're doing. And especially in a case where us, the Empire of Calypso, we're trying to save animals. We are for Black Lives Matter, women's rights, just a plethora of things. And when you have, maybe I'll go back. Let me go to the level 6 micronations, and that might help explain it a little bit, because these are micronations that call themselves micronations, but I don't really believe they are. They are like video game clans or guilds, like Minecraft. They consider that a micronation, and it's not. You're in a video game. Go play your video game. That's not a micronation. I'm sorry, but it's not. Micronations that they start a page on Wiki and say, I'm going to war with so-and-so, these war micronations. Micronations don't go to war. We don't have militaries because we don't have recognized land for the most part. There's a couple spots in Croatia and others where you may physically have to take a piece of property, and if you're willing to do that and jeopardize yourself and your loved ones and whatever for a cause, fine, have at it. But I'm talking specifically about a lot of younger people. They watch videos about the Gulf War or World War II or whatever, and it's so cool to them to have a military and a strike force. And oh, you insulted my mom? Well, I'm going to attack your micronation. You're dead. It doesn't work. It's not a micronation. I don't want this to come out wrong, but you're going to have younger kids, and I think it's great that there's a community that children want to be part of the political process. I do believe they have rights, and they maybe have the same voting rights that we have, although they're not quite developed yet. They have the intelligence, but they don't have the know-how, the wisdom, the experience that someone maybe in their 20s or 30s or 40s and up have. So when I see micronations with the kid that goes, this is my micronation, I just started it, and he shows a picture of a flag that's sort of colored with crayon and scribbled, that's not a micronation to me. I'm sorry, but it's not. There are micronations without land, without a purpose other than to be trolls. Some news outlets specifically go after micronations, and they'll start a micronation in a box or with a rock or a hat and say, this is my micronation, and I'm going to call it the Micronation of Hat, and I'm going to take over the world, and they belittle the community, the real micronational community. And that's not a micronation to me. No land, no purpose, no population other than themselves just claiming at their desk that they are a micronation, when really they're just holding a camera and saying other things are wrong and bad and delegitimizing our community. That's about it. That's my level 1 to 6. You can post if you like. If you agree, great. If you don't, that's great. I'd love to hear what everybody else thinks about this. I'll probably do another video with types of micronations, like religious micronations, activist micronations, like us, like the Empire of Calypso, and go into those a bit more. Ideologies, government types, monarchies, direct monarchies, republics or democracies, which I don't think you'll get anything done with a democracy. So I'll do that at a later date. But I thank you for watching. You can kind of put there in the comments what your micronation is, or where you believe it is, or your list of top micronations, whatever you like. But don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. Thank you so much.